And welcome back to End Zone Focus. Our guest on the programme is Jim Grassi from, well, he's the author of The Ultimate Fishing Challenge and a number of other books, but his speciality is men's ministry. Jim, before the break we were talking about the church and men and saying that the church has got in touch with its feminine side, really, hasn't it?
It has.
Is it too late to attract men in? Because the figures you're giving me seem to say that men have pretty much deserted the church.
Is it too late? No. But the reality is we have a lot of history to make up. Starting with Adam and Eve. Where was Adam, when Eve was tempted by the snake? Adam was, according to Scripture, standing and watching. So from Adam, then through the 13th century, where the Elizabethan era, where men were basically put down, a different role came about for men. There was women's leadership. Today, in a lot of the denominations, you have a high percentage of the people working in the church are women. And God bless them. I mean, we need people to work, but the question is, where are the men? And so we look at the modern church in America today, and those who would call themselves Christian, out of 106 million men, there's roughly 6 million who would identify with what we call a biblical definition of a Christian. Of those 6 million, we're finding 9 out of 10 men whose children would leave the church after 18 years of age. We find 50% of those men involved in pornography at one level or the other. And by the way, the American clergy, the statistic is no different. We're finding divorce rate in the church being the same as in the world. So the relevancy of church as an institution, I believe, has been lost. And what we need to do is to help men think in terms of relationship and transformation.
Do you think part of it is also a generational thing in that younger men don't see the church in the same way that older men do?
Exactly. And we've got to do everything we can to reach down to the 18, 20-year-old men because rightfully so, they have a disappointment with at least my generation and the generation right behind me. We look around. Where are the national and international role models? Our role models are failing. I mean, look at all the emphasis a person like Tiger Woods, with the kind of impact he could have on culture, and yet how will he be remembered? Will he be remembered as the greatest golfer in the world, or a man like many prominent men who took advantage of a position and went astray? And I'm not condemning him at all. I'm saying we all have feet of clay. But the reality is, until we have that personal relationship with Christ and become a true follower of Christ and understand what that means, how can we become the role model and pass on the legacy that God calls us to pass on?
Which actually brings us to the book, which is I know was a bestseller in the United States. Expands that whole idea of fishers of men, which is a phrase that we all use and we all use really glibly, but you expand on that into a whole book on what a fisher of men actually does.
Yeah, the book is really written after Matthew 4:19, when Jesus called his disciples, "Follow me and I'll make you fishers of men." But for many of us, what we don't realize is discipleship is a process. Us guys in full-time ministry want to think, well, it was this great sermon I gave, these men came forward, and that is evangelism. No, Christ paints a different picture. It's a relational picture. And if we look in John 1, he said, "Come and you will see." You see, what he was saying is, let's meet one another, let's fellowship, let's get to know one another. Then in Matthew 4:19, he made his initial call. That's where he said, "Follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. Put down your nets and come with me." And then in Luke 5, he once again says, follow me, I'll make you fishers of men, after he did the miracle of bringing the fish to the boat. And then finally in John 21, to complete the process, he says, if you're going to follow me, you better count the cost. And Peter, he said 3 times, do you love me? I mean, do you really love me? Because you need to count the cost. The discipleship is not a cheap process. It's about relationship. It's about taking risk. It's about all those adjectives we use when we talk about a good fisherman. You know, patience, perseverance, all those kinds of things.
But the interesting thing is that a lot of those things within the church seem to have been devalued.
That's true.
In that a lot of those, I guess you would see as, in inverted commas, manly attributes, but they don't seem to be valued.
We have the church has lost sight of the value of men. You know, the centurion principle tells us, in America anyway, 93% of the time if we get the man, we get the family. Whereas if we get the youth, which so much emphasis is placed on youth, only 9% of the time in an unsaved family will a youth bring an unsaved family into faith. But we have not been challenging to men. We haven't identified with men as a culture, and yet they can help transform a community and help transform that church.
The book is intensely practical. It's full of things to do, which is what men love, isn't it?
Yes.
You give us things to do. Was it hard to write?
No, it wasn't, and I'll tell you why. Jesus Christ was a storyteller. That's how he talked to men. Men connect with stories. In fact, statistics show that if you don't have some practical illustration, you're talking to a group of men, every 7 minutes, you've lost them. You've lost them. And so Christ, through his teachings, taught me that it's better to be practical, and it's better to help men connect with practical thoughts that they can get a hold of, that they can accept from their background and experience, that they can apply then in their lives. Research shows us that most men are lonely, depressed, they don't connect, they don't have one friend they can go to, and that isn't God's plan. God's plan is for us to tear down these barriers within the church, to create a revolution, to have goals and to have tasking that connects with who we are, with our giftedness, and then be able to fellowship with one another.
It's a real challenge, Jim. Thank you very much for your time.
God bless you. Thank you for having me.